Family, as I was reviewing 1 Peter 3:15, that was the next scripture on my daily scripture reflection. It talks about sanctify God in your heart and be ready to give every man an answer for the hope that is in you. But right when I was studying that passage, there was a notification on my YouTube feed. And I was watching this reel, and it was a high school teacher. And he was very distraught and upset, rightfully so, because the majority of the students in his class that's about to graduate, they can't read. So it made me think, how did these kids go through these different levels or write a passage in order to get to that point? Now, I understand in the public school system, it's no kids left behind. And I'm not laying all the blame on the public school system. But I had to ask myself the question, well, where's the parents? Because at some point, they have to play a critical, vital, or an active role in that child's development. Because as they're going through their didactic career, you cannot tell me that they pretty much was just put out on the ocean of life and was allowed to drift without any rudder, any type of engine to guide them against the currents of life, against all different types of obstacles that will allow them or enable them to stay on track. Then it made me think about 1 Corinthians 14:34, where it says, now, normally people run to that text when it's talking about women teaching in, in the context of the church service. But I'm more focused on the B part, where it states, if any woman has a question, let her go home to the husband to get her answer. But what happens when he doesn't have the answer? What happens when you have a flashlight that doesn't have any batteries in it? Then how can that person guide? Because when you look at Psalms 119, 105, for it states, for your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Even in Matthew's 5, I believe is verse 16, it's explicit that we should let our light shine onto the world. But what if that man or woman doesn't have what they need inside of them to be a guide? Then that's where we have this huge problem. There isn't a law, there isn't an SOP, a policy, anything that your local elected official or anybody in Congress can pass that will fix that problem. And that's parenting. This is something that's a basic thing that was passed down since Adam and Eve. It is incumbent upon not just the man, but also the woman to work together to raise these kids in a certain manner where they will be productive. I had a lot of friends. I'm not saying that I always got the best teaching from my parents. They did the best that they could. But at least they gave me a strong enough foundation that I can move forward in a very functional way. Because I don't remember ever in school, maybe it's probably one or two people in all of my academic career, from kindergarten throughout college, that I ever ran into somebody who couldn't read. I think it's probably one or two people. But for it to be at this level where it's becoming more of a common thing where students can't read or they're having issues with math, these basic requirements so you be able to work at any type of job, even at cashier or whatever, then what do we expect for this next generation? How would they be any type of utility in society if they can't even perform basic tasks such as reading and writing, basic arithmetic? Then it is a huge problem. There's a couple of people, there's a lot of people you can probably point the finger to, but it's not about that. For me, I always look at the foundation. I don't look at the symptoms of the problem. I look at the cause of the problem. Because if you address the cause, you will never have to worry about addressing the symptoms. And the cause of the problem is we have destroyed the foundation of what a traditional household should be. You have people just hooking up, having these kids, And then the responsibility afterwards is left to the wayside. It's left to the government to figure out. It's left to these different social programs that they have in place, if it's Section 8 or WIC or all these different programs that's out there. That's becoming the parental figure in these kids' life in their development. But the people that's supposed to be there providing for them, providing those things that they lean on heavily for the government to now step in and provide, it's not really their responsibility. It is not the government's responsibility to step in and provide certain services for you to do certain things in order to raise your child. Because if you would have had the temerity, if you would have had the wisdom to, when you hooked up with that individual, to say no, 2 letters, no, then the consequences of that act, bringing forth an innocent child, would have never happened. Because if you have both people was just hooking up, but you didn't really like each other, or you can look at it from the other side, maybe at one point you did like each other, but it wasn't really anything serious. It wasn't like it was done with the intentions that eventually I was going to get married. But you did engage in marriage activity, as in sexual encounter, as in concomitance. But after that event, where things went south, the child is stuck in the middle. And now they're here not knowing any better. They're relying on the mother and father to teach them basic moral principles of right and wrong, but it's not there. And then a child goes off to school. They start kindergarten and they're off on their way. They come home every day. I understand a lot of parents, they work all day, they're tired. But you have to understand, when you're a parent, those 24 hours in a day, all that time is not yours anymore. You're going to have to allocate time to work, and then you're going to have to allocate time to your family. And what's ever left over, unfortunately, I know this might suck, it's that time is for you. But you're going to have to put other people first. And I think that's something that parents, we really need to press upon our kids. When you decide to get married and have kids, you have to understand that your time, 24 hours in a day, 8 hours is spent sleeping, 8 to 10 hours is spent at work. Whatever time you have left, that time goes to your family and doing what your responsibility and your duties are. And then whatever few minutes, an hour, 2, 3 hours, whatever time you have, that's for you. But you cannot neglect their time, their development, you being there for them, making sure that their clothes are washed, that they're studying, doing their homework, not just writing some random nonsense on a piece of paper and hitting submit. And their homework, yes, they submitted their homework, but they didn't do it. The answers is completely off. Nobody is monitoring. You have kids today that's in junior high school and they can't even write. Who's monitoring that stuff at the home? This is not to bash anybody, but guys, you have to admit, this is complete neglect. This is completely turning a blind eye. And then the sad part is, a lot of parents know that this is going on, but they just look at it like, hey, what do you want me to do? Be a voice. Use your platform. And if you're not on social media, talk to your friends. Because if the blind lead the blind, y'all both going to fall into the ditch. But some of you guys that's going through these hardships in raising a child, speak to the next generation and say, hey, I don't think it's a good idea to go this path if you're not ready. I don't think it's a good idea to go this path if you're not with the right person. Because this is hard. This is not easy. But if you don't have the right support system, or if you don't have the right partner that's in your corner, it is not going to end well. It's going to be an absolute disaster. Because you really have to prioritize your time. You have to be structured. It's not all about you anymore. And if you don't want to give up that type of freedom and liberty to do whatever you want to do, then don't have kids. Don't even think about marriage. This is a serious and an honorable responsibility, because you're preparing the next generation to run this world, to be a blessing and a utility in a community. But we can't keep on putting kids out there that's just destroying a community, that is destroying the reputation of a people. Because why? Individuals just don't care. Then you have those who are doing it. Those individuals that are doing it and doing it the right way, speak up. Let people know. Yes, I understand a lot of noise that you hear online and the internet. It almost seems like nobody's doing the right thing. Yes, but there are people out here who are successfully married. Is it always mountaintop living in marriage? No. But you don't spend a lot of times in the valley also. But if you ever go through issues in life, you have to ask God, what are you trying to teach me in this storm? Because it's lessons that need to be learned. Because it's something about your character or something about you that you need to fix. Don't always beat yourself up and you want to just lash out at the world. No, it's a reason why you're going through certain things. It's a reason why you in certain places in life. Because you need to grow. Because your blessing is already there, whatever you're looking for in life. But your blessing is waiting for you to be able to carry it. Some people are not ready. And the longer you delay it, the longer it's going to take for you to get it. But some people never get it because they refuse to grow and change in certain areas in their life in order to receive their blessing. Having kids is a blessing. Being married is a blessing. But if you listen to today's rhetoric, you would think that is a curse. I understand that people talk about, well, if you look at the laws, if we get a divorce, they take that. That's something y'all would have to have a conversation with your significant other, how that's going to work before y'all get married. And guess what? Guys, guess what? If you have a young lady who is totally against that, don't take it personal. God is telling you that person is not for you. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't get a prenup. That's up to you guys. But I am saying that y'all should definitely have that conversation. And y'all should have not just conversations regarding prenups, but other things in life, other things that you would get a better understanding of their moral character and their foundation. Why would you go into a marriage blind just because they look good and they have a good career? And then when things start hitting the fan, all those things that caused your marriage to go south, they was always there. But you refused to see it, or you refused to ask pertinent questions to give you the answers that you needed before you went down that path. But it shouldn't just be a child deciding if that person, or a child deciding if that man or woman is the right person for me. The parents should be there also. The family should be there also, giving their input, letting them know according to God's word if this person is the right one. Because Jeremiah 10:23 won't change. It was there before I was born, and it's going to be there after I die. It is not within man to direct his own steps. You cannot use a flashlight with broken batteries. Who in the world do you expect to lead? Y'all both can't be blind. Somebody has to have at least the volition, not to just to choose, or the understanding to make better choices so y'all can have better outcomes. But if both people are incompetent, both people were not raised to be in that role of husband and wife, why in the world are we marrying these people? What happened to marriage counseling before people get married? All these things are just pushed to the wayside, and we're shocked at not just the outcomes of marriages, but we also shocked at what's going on with our kids. To make it all the way to the 12th grade, I want you to think about that. To make it all the way to the 12th grade and you can't read or write or do math, that is egregious. That is complete incompetence on both parties. And if that person was raised in a single family household, come on. You cannot tell me that the teachers haven't been calling for years. Jimmy or Susan needs help in this area. Jimmy and Susan is not doing good in this area. You knew what was going on, but you just allowed it. You kept on hiding behind excuses why you need help, why it can't happen. Be a voice then. Stop the next generation of people or your constituents or people in your generation from following or making the same mistakes. Speak up. Say something. Stop using social media for other nonsense. Use it to educate the next generation. Because when men say it, it comes across a different way. It's received a different way. But when women say something, I think they will be more open, not in a pejorative way like they trying to tear you down. This is about encouraging and helping people to let them understand, hey, listen, you can change. Things can get better. It doesn't have to stay like this. But if you allow things to continue on this path where your sign says dead end, what do you expect when they finally get there? We have to do better. We have to be better examples, but it starts with us. We cannot hold kids responsible for things that we refuse to do. We just can't. And I plead with anybody who's thinking about getting married or who's currently soon about to get married, really consider, are you ready or is that person ready? I understand you might be a lawyer, that person might be a doctor. Both got amazing careers. But if y'all wasn't raised with that real understanding what it is to be a wife and what it is to be a husband, I would strongly suggest y'all do marriage counseling first and come to that understanding on your own, or don't go down that aisle, because it's going to end how the rest of them always end, in a disaster. Why eventually go a road that's going to lead to hurt and y'all going to dislike each other and hate each other, where y'all can just end it right here and say, you know what, I'm not ready for this. You would not, in any profession, let's say if you had a surgeon, well, we thought he was a surgeon, and they going into an operating room. They just started, they're not a board certified surgeon, right? They just started residency. You would not put that person in a situation where they would have to perform surgery without some type of supervision. It's a reason why they go through residency, so they can learn. But how many men and women went through marriage residency? That means being raised in a certain way where you was exposed to what marriage looked like, how a man should act in his role, how a woman should act in her role. Never went through that residency. But now you're trying to go out there and function in a specific role, and you don't have a clue of what you're doing. You're just basing it things off of what you've seen on TV or what you probably observe in a different context, but you just don't know. You don't have real life experience, and yet you're still trying to fill a role just so you can say, I have a ring on my finger. That doesn't mean nothing. And now we have a generation of kids being born because parents are not putting aside their pride and saying, this is not something for me. I don't want to bring a child into this world because I'm not ready. There's still a lot of things I need to learn. You're not going to know everything, but I'm talking about basic foundational things that I still need to learn before I can be a good wife or before I can be a good mother. But no, we'll go right ahead. Men, they're going to do what they're going to do. They don't care. It's almost like big game hunting. They're trying to feed some type of urge or sexual desire. And unfortunately, because of that, look what happens. The girl might get pregnant. You wasn't doing it for that because you wanted a child. You was just doing it to fulfill a selfish need. And now a child is involved. From jump, you was never going to be a good dad. You can barely take care of yourself. So how can you take care of the child? But yet a child is born. And now because the man is not capable, now the state gets involved. Now it's all these different programs. The fall is not in the home. Then where are they getting that manly upbringing? Where is that man depositing certain things that they need to know? But if your batteries are not working, then your flashlight is not functioning. Then how can you guide that child? You guys are out here dating people with broken batteries or no batteries at all. And not one time did you ever try to turn on the switch to see if this person was functioning the way they're supposed to. What we'll do is we'll look at how beautiful the box looks, right, for the flashlight. We'll look at how nice that thing looks when you take it out. But when you look inside, there's nothing there. See, that's what we do. We make it appeal the way we dress, the way we speak. Oh, we can put on a show. We can put on a facade. But then when it comes down to it, When all that stuff is stripped away, you realize there's nothing there. And when it's too late, that's when you realize I made a big mistake. But that person can't hide anymore. All that mirage, that camouflage, all the spectacle, all the pretending, all the lie upon lies, everything just shatters. And then they laid bare, and they can't even look at themselves in the mirror because they know deep down inside that person that they created, that avatar, is not who they really are. But the real them is broken. But because they wanted to engage with that woman in a certain way, and they was that urge and that drive was so strong, they created this fantasy and they sold it to her. She believed it, and unfortunately, a child was born. Now they need you to step up and fulfill all those things you said you can do. But guess what? You can't, because it was just something that you created. It's almost like in one of these games, you created this character, but that's not really you. Some of these people profiles on social media, you know this. Their profile pictures is not them. You guys are getting catfished, not just from a profile picture, but also from a character perspective. These people are not who they say they are. And then you have the other side of it. These people are who they say they are. They are this person in this profession making all this money. But in the context of the marriage, it's not there, because why? The teaching they received was just to push them to be successful in life, because it was expected for them to get married. Guess what happened? They was never taught. You can't use your status at work to fill that void. If you don't know, you just don't know. And you can try to pretend all you want. After a while, the stress of coming home every day, you not really mentally being in it because you wasn't taught. You've been through so many short-term relationships. Now you in a long-term relationship that's supposed to last for years. You've never been in a situation where you might have disagreements, but you have to know how to navigate so y'all can work things out and still coexist in the household. You was never taught that. You never seen that. What you used to do is default. And every time you was in a crazy situation, you just run away or you shut people off. But in the marriage, you can't do that. There always have to be an open line of communication. You're not going to always get your way. She's not going to always get her way. But there's a moral demarcation y'all both know not to cross, and everybody have to know their specific roles in their marriage. And a lot of y'all roles intertwine. But this is something that you had to know growing up. Remember what I said before, your marriage residency, what you were supposed to learn at home. Because I don't think any hospital will hire a nurse and they will give them on-the-job training without going through some type of residency. That would be insane. Any doctor going through a residency, who would hire a doctor that never went through residency or passed their boards? That would be insane. Because if you allow that person then to operate in that service or that clinic and something happens with the patient, then you're going to have a huge problem. Because nobody vetted that individual to see if they were who they say they were. Nobody vetted that man or woman when y'all got into a relationship to make sure that they were who they said they were. But we allow these people to go down the aisle, get married, have these kids. Now look at our young men and women. Not all of them, but to even have whatever percentage that there is to make it all the way to the 12th grade that can't read, write, or do basic arithmetic, then that means the system has failed. And it's going to take us, because there isn't a law, there isn't a policy, there isn't an SOP. It's nothing that the school, the government can do that's going to fix a broken home problem. It's going to have to start with two people understanding we're in this situation, and only way we can get out if we have to do something about it. And when you understand that, when you can look in yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm here because of my choices. The only way I'm going to get out is going to be from our choices, then we'll have better efficacy or better outcomes.